Well, hello.
Hello, happy Monday.
Yes. We have a special show. We said it's about following the money, but it's actually about lizard people. That is our show tonight. Nobody would watch if we said it was actually about lizard people.
True enough.
I was never a firm believer in lizard people until I saw Nancy Pelosi, and I'm like, that chick is 150 years old or too old for shedding her skin. She's overdue. She is overdue.
Well, I believed in lizard people because I used to watch V as a child.
Oh, that'll do it.
And so I was convinced. I think I was 8 or 9 when that was out. I might have been a little bit older, but somewhere in that vicinity. And I remember thinking everybody I met on the street was now probably a lizard person underneath their human skin.
Well, that's definitive proof right there. So irrefutable, if you ask me. Yeah.
Well, the TV was a propaganda machine. So
it was. Yeah.
Why not? Right.
So they're just telling you. Yeah. Does it mean Alf is real too?
Well, he is an alien. So why not?
Okay.
Why not? So is Big Bird. Yay.
Oh, look who's back. Dash It. We haven't seen in a while. V, great show. Yeah,
it was a great show. It was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mother's Day was on the weekend. I hope you all spent time giving your mom some love. And you know what? The best gift you can give her is your time. As a mom of 3, I would definitely have appreciated having the time of all of my children. Unfortunately, I just spent it with the one. So
right.
But the other 2 live in provinces away. So
yeah.
Makes sense.
Yes, because they have fled the province.
They have fled the province, and they're not so keen on their mom and her bullshit political activism.
Yeah, neither am I, but what are you going to do? So
you have to live with me. They didn't have to live with me. They got to move far away and start their adult lives. But that's okay.
Okay. Yeah. So we do have a show for you. I would say this is not our deepest show. There's a lot of stuff like niggling at us that we've got to talk about, and it's always about the money. But we were so invested in this Wallapini that we're in the backyard, and I've spent all weekend building this Wallapini. I've just come back from that, and boy, are my arms tired. So yeah, we had an auger going, and that wasn't even getting through the it's just godless, soulless ground. This thing, it just won't quit on you.
That is. So. And Dash Out, he's talking about the Northern Lights that everybody got to see. The CERN sky for Mother's Day. Yeah, it was pretty spectacular. We missed it because we were nursing our old, feeble, broken bones from working on the Wallapini.
Speak for yourself there.
But yeah, I got to see pictures, and it looked fantastic. And my son did tell me all about it. He was like totally in awe over it. So those who saw it, it definitely made an impression.
Yeah, amazing. That just means floods are coming, eh? They're cerning it up.
They're cerning it up
over there. Yeah,
we should do a show on.
We are going to do a show on CERN, yeah, because it's not just CERN, right? There's several of them around the world, and there's actually another little mini CERN in Canada. So, yeah.
Yeah, I thought there was just one, and it turns out there's like, I don't know, 40.
Yeah. So we're doing, look into it. Yeah. If you look into it, we don't even have to do a show on it. So that's awesome. So,
yes, I think Edward Embry was on our show and did a brief little 2-minute on it.
Yeah.
But
so tonight, what do we got? What do we got, Jody?
Oh, tonight we're going to be talking about the banking. As Chris said earlier, banking is one of our favorite things right now because we know those who control the money are who actually control all the strings behind the scenes. We know we just did our Secret Societies 4-part series, and we do know that the Committee of 300 is one of the big boys when it comes to pulling the strings, and all of them are attached to large corporations and obviously own all of the banks. So we thought maybe we should stick with the theme of banks for right at the moment, because so many people are always asking us for solutions and what we can do to save ourselves. And we keep saying, get your money out of the bank. You want to hurt the predators, hurt them in their wallets. I don't know if y'all are doing that, but
yeah, we got to stop funding these guys. They're they're waging a war against us with our own money. So why are we funding them? We've got to put financial sanctions on our banks and our government. Yeah, so
exactly. And the banks have been in the news a lot lately, not only because of our budget that was released, and Chrystia Freeland has some banking stuff in the budget, but banks are going bankrupt. They're going under. We know they're shutting down branches all over the place. Did you know, and I found this today, that in 2010, I think it was, or 2020, no, 2010, there was 8,000 banks in the US. In 2021, that number went from 8,000 down to 4,200 and change.
Mhm.
And then in 2022 or 2023, that number went even further down to 4,100.
Mhm.
So, in a matter of 10 years or 14 years, we've lost over half the
Where is that?
banking
Is that
system.
just in the States? Is that
those were American numbers that I came across.
right? Okay.
So we've lost over half the banking system in the States.
Yeah. So they're kind of doing it under the wire, sneaking it along there. Banks are definitely something you got to keep your eye on. And we keep saying it, get your money out of there, and get silver. It's poised to go up. Gold is poised to go up as well, but who can afford gold? So, but if we get our money out of the banks, that's step one, right?
Yeah, they say defund the banks, or, people were saying defund the police when they didn't like what the police were doing. But you know what? The police sometimes keep us safe. They answer the call sometimes when you're having a heart attack situation and the ambulance hasn't gotten to you first. The police tend to, or the firemen tend to. But realistically, we should be defunding the banks.
Yeah, banks won't save you. If you've had a heart attack, they're going to just take your watch and check your pocket for loose change. That's what bankers will do. They're going
to steal your blood and your eyes and your heart and your liver and all of that, the banks.
What kind of bank are you banking at?
Hey, the banks, all the people behind the banks are the ones who are doing all the nasty things to us. And they're the ones in charge of the blood supply and all of that sort of jazz. So, just take the call from the airport.
That's right. Yeah. Bail in a day, out in 6 months, and rich for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So we got a little bit of banking. I know that's, as you're tuning in, watching us talk about banking and accounting, that's some hot, sexy stuff.
So exciting.
Right there. Yeah. So I'm going to be amazed at how many people will be here at the end of this.
Well, we're also going to be talking about the freedom movement. We've been receiving some hot topic emails that we just thought, we're going to shed some light on this. And we're also going to shed some light on the topic of, is the freedom movement failing? And if so, why? That was really hot around probably January. I think everybody was talking about it in January. It might even have been December. And we just kind of went, we're going to steer clear of it. But then we started getting these emails recently and we went, you know what? We're going to shed some light on it now. So, but we're going to deal with the boring stuff first, because the boring stuff affects every single one of us.
Well, I wouldn't say it's boring.
No,
it's sometimes it's the medicine you have to take before the sugar, right?
True. But it is, the banking system definitely will affect all of us. It will have a major impact on our lives. And for whatever reason, human beings always seem to want to poo-poo the things that have major impact on our lives and never seem to want to get involved with the things that have major impact on our lives. So we are going to start the show off with major impacts on our lives.
It's only God when God brought it into the picture. Yeah. When we talk about God, the numbers drop for sure, but banking is definitely a rival for that. And then, of course, we've got a little bit of Michael Chuchong coming up for you today. Some stories from Michael Chuchong, and that's the face that keeps you coming back, we know.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
As he's chewing and trying not to spit out his food as he's laughing.
Yeah, we won't bring him on.
Bring him on this moment.
I'm hovering over the put him on stage button, but no.
He's late to dinner. Let him finish chewing.
Right. So let's get right into it. Let's roll up our sleeves and talk about banking. So banks, Canadian banks, these kind of all tie in together, by the way. So wait for it. Canada banks provided 100 billion in fossil fuel funding, reports.
Yeah, so we were looking at the banks, and there was literally 4 banking stories that came across my desk between last night and this morning. So this was one of them. This was really interesting because we know with the budget and the DEI and climate change that the banks are being forced to mandate the way that they now will fund clients, customers, and investors. And part of the climate change agenda is that banks must now start keeping track of carbon scores, carbon credit scores. And so we see from this here that the banks make approximately $100 billion off of fossil fuel investors. So people who actually take out loans, corporations that take out loans with the banks in order to further their fossil fuel business. And our government wants them to stop funding and loaning money to fossil fuel corporations because of climate change.
So, yeah, well, the government, along with the banks, wanted to eliminate fossil fuels. Yes, they do.
Until they see these numbers.
Right. But the ultimate goal here is to get us on CBDCs and digital ID and get us into that digital prison. So they're manufacturing a bunch of reasons why banks are going to fail. And it'll be the smaller banks and then the bigger banks. And we'll get into that a little bit. But climate change really isn't the goal. Or climate change, as we know, getting down to carbon, net
zero.
Yeah.
Net zero.
Yeah, where it kills us all.
So the banks are now starting to put together 1 + 1 = 2, and 1 + 1 right now is $100 billion in fossil fuel funding.
Right.
That is going to disappear if they happen to hop on the climate change train that the governments and our predators want them to hop on. And now they're going, holy cow.
Right.
Where are we going to make up the shortfall of this? And now some banks are starting to go, not sure that we want to jump on that train after all, because I don't see where we're going to make up that $100 billion loss in profits.
Right. So banks are going to like, oh, well, I'm going to invest where the money goes. And so now other banks are going, well, we need firm commitments. They're required to accelerate clean economic growth. And that's why banks are implementing climate action plans that set specific targets to meet the demands of this global challenge. And we covered all of that in OSFI and where that's coming down the pike. We're talking about that a little bit later too. So now it talks about trending. And the big complaint is at the bottom there, if there's no policy in place that limits financial intentionality, then when a new project comes up, who's going to be the first in line to finance that project? So basically they're saying, if we're not all on board, then we're all going to be fighting to these fossil fuel projects, and we're not going to get the climate change
net zero
goals that you want.
Exactly. And Chrystia Freeland had a press conference, was it a week ago or 2 weeks ago, where she was talking about
political pincher move.
That's right. And she was talking about taxonomy. And taxonomy is this whole new word. I've never heard of this word before until recently. But she's talking about
it's a combination of tax
and autonomy.
No. Taxidermy.
Taxidermy.
So they're going to kill you and stuff you through taxes, basically.
Yeah. But taxonomy, and what they're really worried about is this word greenwashing. And I'd never heard of greenwashing either until we went to that SDG summit back in September. And basically, what the banks are now saying is because there's no standard and they don't know who can or who can't fund these fossil fuels adventures or ventures as they come up, they are saying it's not fair because some banks are going to still fund those fossil fuels so they don't lose the billions of profits, and other banks are not going to, so that they can come within the net zero climate change carbon credit scoring and look good with our government. But that at the same time, they no longer are making profits. They're now losing money. So they will have to fold their doors.
Right. So side note, that's exactly how they're selling one world government as well, right? We'll never have peace until we all have peace, and we need a one world government to manage that. We won't have everybody's going to do these wicked lab experiments unless nobody does them, and so that's how they push the one world stuff.
Exactly. So as we keep saying, the predators create a problem. The people cry the blues. And so then they ask for solutions. They lobby the government for solutions. And lo and behold, magically, they have solutions. And what has happened? The predators have created this climate change problem, net zero problem. They've now dominoed effect this, forcing the issue onto the banks because us humans did not fall for it. So now the banks are being forced to comply. And now the banks are crying, saying, well, we don't have a solution. We don't know what to do. Please, please, predators, help us, help us. And our predator leadership has said, no problem. We're going to come out with this taxonomy standards guideline, and we're going to throw it out there. So right now, Chrystia Freeland made the announcement that this standards guideline has gone out to all the financial institutions. They have until June 10th to comment on it and decide whether they like this standardized guide. And if they do, that standardized guide will be used to help them manage the Basel IV and OSFI, what do you want to call it, policies that are being implemented on them.
Right. And so political pincher move, if you don't know what that is, go to our show on Marxism 101. Once you get all the keys, you see exactly what's going on all the time. You really, it helps a lot with that discernment and figuring out what's real, what's not. But basically, the government wants something to happen. So they use people in the civilian or in the private sector to demand it. So they create a problem, they get people to demand an answer or a solution, and then the government acquiesces and kindly gives them the solution that they demand. But basically, they've been setting it up, and the people in the middle who don't want it, they hear the people crying for it, and they hear the government pitching for it, and they're like, well, am I the only one who doesn't want it? And you feel like you're isolated, but really it's them setting it up on both ends.
Exactly. So here we go. The rollout, you're starting to see how the CBD system is going to be rolled out, and it's going to affect all the banks because now the banks are calling for a standardized policy procedure that they all are going to have to now implement in order to not have one bank over the other get all the profits and all the other banks go close their doors all at once. So essentially what this will do is close doors one at a time, just another way for them to bankrupt the system and close the doors without taking on the blame.
Right. And we covered this months ago that they were bringing out Basel IV, and that's all that has. We've covered all of this. We knew it was coming, and here's how they're setting the stage to make that happen. Right.
Exactly. So that's one way they're doing it.
Yeah. Now, TD. This was a big one. Now, obviously, this was a big story. TD Bank lost a decade, like 10 years of money, 10 years of profits in money laundering scandal, says Jeffrey. So this was big news, and it really was. TD, with their U.S. end, got caught in a giant drug money laundering scam through fentanyl and whatnot, and somehow they missed it.
Chinese drug ring is what they're calling it, the Chinese drug ring.
Somehow they missed it for a whole decade. But we all know that this stuff has been run through banks, and money laundering has been run through banks for centuries. Yeah, exactly right. And somehow TD missed it.
So TD is now being investigated, and I think there's been probably 10 articles now from about the middle of April right up until current day. And the fines and the penalties just keep adding up and adding up. And today, yesterday or a couple of days ago, they were saying upwards of $658 million worth of penalties is what they're going to be allocated. And today I read $1 billion in penalties is what they're looking at charging the TD Bank for not being on top of their money laundering policies. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But again, it's another way to force banks to close, because it's another policy coming their way. It's going to be stricter policy saying, hey, this bank went down because of money laundering. We're sure they're not the only one. So that this is going to have a domino effect on the other 5 big banks here in Canada, to strengthen and make stricter their policies regarding money laundering. And they're going to start investigating, because if TD is doing it, most likely everyone else is doing it too. These Chinese drug lords are pretty crafty, and they're not going to throw all of their eggs in one basket. They're going to spread them around. So you can rest assured that if the climate change taxonomy isn't going to shut them down, the fossil fuel profiteering, then they're going to go after them for drug money laundering to shut them down.
Now, we know that the banks have been given a certain amount of time to ease into Basel and ease into where we're heading. We know the banks are in cahoots with the government. If you're cynical, if you don't think that this story is just on face value what you see it is, and if you're like us, then you know that there's probably 2 other deeper outcomes that they want to have. And the 2 obvious deeper outcomes are, we can take a bank down anytime we want. So then you've got the big 6 banks. Now you got 5. Then you got 4, right? And
then you got one centralized digital banking system.
Exactly right. And so, but the other thing is, of course, the pass on to the consumer. And right now we know people are having trouble just taking $3,000 out of the bank. We know that already. So then that cracks down. Well, we can't give you more than $300. You have to report everything. Any income that's not through a paycheck, you need to report. You need to ask us, you need to tell us why you're taking out more than $500 in cash. Like it used to be,
you just walked in and took it out.
Then it was 5,000, and now it's like $1,000 you try and take out in cash. So, well, 3,000, I guess you got, but anything more than that, and you have to tell them why, as if it's any of their business.
Well, you don't have to tell them, but they make your life very, very difficult until you tell them. And now with the money laundering through the drug trade fiasco, it's going to be even more difficult. So basically, did I give you a slide of what it is that they're looking for?
Who?
The banking. The seven things that they're looking for.
That.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't want to talk out of turn. I'll let you forward the slides before we go.
Well, when it comes to money, that's because the government's all caught up in doing it. That's why. So they don't really want to prosecute anything and set precedents, because it might come back to bite them. No, this is OSFI.
Oh, you didn't do the take your money out.
Well, let's just move right over to there. Whoop, whoop.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So what happens when a bank closes your account? You may not think this could happen to you. A bank generally can close your account at any time and for any reason, and sometimes without notifying you in advance. Now that I didn't know. I thought they had to let you know.
No, they do not have to. There's no legislation saying they have to notify you that they're closing your account. And lo and behold, I found that out with 2 of my credit cards, that they just closed them because I don't use them enough. Because, we've been pulling back out of the system. So I stopped using my credit cards. And I knew that I had put a lot of money on one as a credit, so that should I had to use it for any purpose, like booking a hotel or something like that, then I knew that there was money there. And lo and behold, I went to do that, and I couldn't use my credit card. It kept getting declined, and I couldn't figure out why. So I finally made the phone call. And I was told, well, you haven't used that card in a very long, or you haven't used our card in a very long time, so we shut down your account. And I said, well, that's pretty funny, because I made a payment back in January, a considerable amount of payment, so I'd have a credit balance sitting there, and that didn't come back to me. And so they, did their little computing, and sure enough, he's like, oh, you're right. I don't know why that happened. Don't worry, I'll put in a request to send you that money back. So they didn't want to open my card back up, because they're not making any money out of me keeping that card open. So they're just sending me my money back.
Right.
So this is happening, and it happened with a second card, which was And I discovered that one today too. So it's amazing what the banks and banking systems, because credit cards are part of the banking system, what they're starting to do now.
Right. So here's some of the reasons a bank can shut you down. Dormant account, non-use. So that was like your credit card. Zero balance. So if you're not keeping anything in there, which a lot of us are doing now, bounced checks or overdrafts. Too many transfers back and forth between
your
accounts.
checking account, your line of credit, and your savings account. If you do too much transferring back and forth, they're just going to delete one or two of your accounts because they don't want you to do that.
Suspected identity theft. Well, that makes sense. No worries there. Criminal convictions. So if you're committed or convicted of a crime,
they can shut down your bank account if you don't tell them. So apparently now your criminal activity is now the bank's business. And if they happen to find out later on that you have a criminal record and you didn't tell them, I guess based on whatever that criminal record is, they will shut down your account, which I guess the Freedom Convoy people, anyone who donated, they got their accounts shut down, and Pat King still has his account frozen to this day. So I guess that's one of those things.
Some people donated $10 and they got their bank account shut down. High risk occupation. So that's an odd one.
It is an odd one. And I think when it said high risk occupation, it was like people who deal in pharmaceuticals, people who have marijuana industries, marijuana stores.
Oh, I see.
Those are considered high risk occupations.
But not firefighters.
Yeah, not firefighters.
Okay.
It's more along those lines. They can shut your bank account, or at least that's the example they gave.
Right.
They can shut your bank accounts down.
Right. And then changes at the bank, of course.
So if the bank shut down, your bank account gets automatically shut down.
Right.
Now, when that happens, if you happen to have a balance in your account, they're supposed to send that back to you. But as I discovered with my MasterCard account, they don't always send it back to you. Sometimes you actually have to call and find out what's going on in order to get your credit. And hopefully there's still someone there to answer the phone when you call, because if there's not, you might be SOL.
So back to this one. OSFI chief defends scrutiny of non-financial risk at Canada's banks. Now, here's the thing. In here, he'll cite it regulates an incorrect meme that misrepresents the steps taken by the regulator to deal with non-financial risks. We looked everywhere. There is no
I couldn't find a meme.
We actually think that this story was written to counteract our carbon colonization story, where we outlined exactly how OSFI was manipulating studies for regulations. So they think that basically he says there that steps taken by the regulator to deal with non-financial risks that could lead to financial and stability concerns. These include foreign interference, third-party and cyber risk, and the security of physical and information assets. At the top, I just sort of missed it. Routledge, who's in charge of OSFI right now, referred to the interpretation that OSFI has articulated expectations for specific cultural values at financial institutions it regulates as an incorrect meme. So basically, what they're saying is there's incorrect information going around that OSFI sets the tone for all the cultures at the banks. We certainly didn't say that. What we said is they're setting the baseline. They're creating the baseline for which all the banks use as their baseline to derive their science in estimating financial risks. So they're making up the baseline is what we said. And then the banks are doing the rest.
And that baseline is based on Q4 2023, which was all in their information on the internet. So we didn't make anything up. We brought it to you straight from their own lips.
Right. Our guideline only asks board of directors to define their institution's own culture and underlying values, then take deliberate action into shape, evaluate, and maintain them. That part's true. What he didn't say is that all of those scenarios that they're creating are created from their false baseline. Routledge said in remarks, solvency and liquidity risks remain a key area of focus for OSFI, but taking a step back, it's easy to see how non-financial risks also fall under the purview of a prudential financial regulator. So basically, even though it's not banking, that still comes in under their umbrella. Experience teaches us that inadequate assessment of non-financial risks is usually the root cause of financial instability at an institution, and that financial risks often emerge as the final signals of that process. So what he's saying is technically true, but what he's not mentioning is that they created this false baseline. That was the whole point. These think tanks create these false studies. They manipulate these studies, and then the governments take those studies from these preconceived think tanks that they work with anyway, and then they create legislation out of it because they have studies, right? And that's what the OSFI is doing right now. And they're refuting it. So we swear that story came from our story. Carbon colonization, that story actually peaked as far as viewership goes. So we know it was getting shared around, and most likely through the government, because nobody was reporting on OSFI.
Exactly. And we also know that this is, again, it's all to get to net zero, and it's asset-backed banking. And now they're saying their policies are going to be based on non-financial risks. That is your carbon credit score.
Right.
Because that has nothing to do with money, has nothing to do with whether you pay your bills on time, whether you can afford a mortgage or not, has zero to do with that, and has everything to do with the government or global predators' agenda. Nothing to do with finances. So.
Right. So you think we say the big 5 banks, the big 6 banks, whatever in Canada. Here's something we came across. So we did a little digging with Yahoo Finance, and this is really interesting for me to know. So National Bank, none of the other banks are really invested in National Bank. It's a one province bank, so they're not really interested. But in CIBC, RBC owns 6.9, a value of 4.3 billion. So I'm going in asset value. So the lower down we go, it's the bigger the bank. So BMO, RBC owns 9% of that. Scotiabank, they own 8.3% of that. TD 8.6%, and RBC owns 5.4% of their own bank. So those are the estimated values in billions. So, but all the other banks also own shares in all the other banks. It gets convoluted, and we didn't bother getting into that. But RBC owns like big chunks of these banks. So, if another bank like TD went down, that would just increase the value of RBC. So they would absorb that loss. So that begs the question, well, who owns most of RBC? And when we say most of, who has the biggest share value, who has the most shares in these companies as far as institutional holders go? And that came up as Canoe Financial, and they own 151 million shares, roughly $15 billion, 10% stake at Royal Bank of Canada.
And this is as of May 9th, 2024.
Right.
Okay?
So that's May 9th. And I went back to go get another screen grab. Now I screen grabbed that doing research, thinking, well, we'll come back to that. And I didn't want to forget anything. So that was May 9th. I grabbed that. I went back today. Canoe Financial's gone. It's not on Yahoo Finance anymore. So I'm deep diving Canoe Financial right now, and it's coming up some interesting things, including some affiliations with Korean oil drilling here in Canada, like foreign drilling here in Canada. So they just completely disappeared. So if they're selling 151 million shares, that's a 10% stake in Royal Bank, you would think that would cause a panic within the stocks, right?
And if not a panic, at least some headlines in any of the financial reporting magazines or newspapers, and yet crickets. So in 4 days, these guys disappeared.
Right.
Literally disappeared. And we had 2 days of weekend, so no trading in the weekend. So realistically, in 2 days, they went from 10% to non-existent. So what happened, and why did it not hit any of the major media or stock exchange explosions or magazines or Forbes or insider trading or anything.
Right.
Why
That's a
is it
big
not
chunk.
talked about?
So maybe you all can go to Yahoo Finance, type in Royal Bank of Canada, and see if you can find Canoe there. Maybe if it's anomaly because it's my IP address and they're messing with me, but they're not there on any other financial. They had stock in a lot of the banks, like half the banks, and they're gone off all of those banks too. And I found them in a few places, but their biggest stake was in RBC, and that's gone. And so you would think a 10% sell off in a few days would trigger a sell, right?
Well, look what happened with that. What was it?
GameStop.
GameStop. Like that was massive news.
Right.
Every day it was massive news.
Right.
So this should have been this should have been massive news because so many stocks and bonds and mutual funds and GICs are in the banking sector. So for one of the shareholders to sell off 10% or at least disappear 10%, that should have made major headlines.
You'd see some fluctuation in the last week, right? Oops. Oh, way fast. They actually went up.
RBC went up.
Their stock went way up in 1 week. They went from 139 to 142. So that sell-off didn't seem to bother anybody. Now you see a dip there for sure in the middle. You see
that may have been where they sold.
Maybe, but it went gigantically right up afterwards. They skyrocketed again right after that. So
what happened?
What happened? Are they there? Did they disappear? And why did they sell? Why did they instantly sell other bank stocks? So I called Canoe Financial, and for some reason they didn't get back to me. And so we'll if they do give me a call back, we will certainly report on that.
So it'll be interesting to see if we strike a chord with anybody tonight with this reporting, and if another article comes out about some online social media meme.
Exactly. So so that's the banking as they have it. But here's one of the largest investors in Canada. That in itself, Canoe Financial, just comes out of nowhere in 2008, and they emerged out of Enervest, a company called Enervest, and Brett Wilson, he was in Shark Tank Shark Tank Canada. He's one of the bigger co-founders of that company. So they're all of a sudden went from nothing, a small company of 4 guys, and now they're like hundreds of billions of dollars they're responsible for now in the space of just over 10 years. So good on them for that, I guess.
Well, anyway. I'd be interested to know what other predators' names are behind that, just for tax purposes.
Well, we don't know if there's any predators. They might just all be really decent people. Anyway, long story short, because they had $100 million, I'm not going to court against them. That's for sure.
No.
So you know what? Maybe this is a good time to bring on Michael Chuchong. Should we bring on Michael Chuchong?
Sure. Are you done with the banking?
Yeah, that's it. We already covered these slides.
Okay. Bring on Michael. Bring on Michael.
All right. Hi, Michael.
Hello. How's it going?
Look at that mic. It's working right out of the gate.
For once.
Yeah. For once. So, Michael, what do you got for us? I know you put in a bunch of stories in the chat. So
that's right.
Yeah, I don't have a lot prepared, but the first one here, a lot of people are probably aware of this, but there's a class action going on in Quebec. At first I thought it was 2 different class actions, but yeah, it seems to be the same class action against Facebook and YouTube, alleging that they content moderation policies on the social media platform during the pandemic violated Quebecers' freedom of expression. So I found out the case was started by a lawyer named William DeRoche. And the individual whose case he's using as the example to start it was Eloise Bois, who had a YouTube channel, and it got canceled and deleted, and she had to start everything again. And so apparently Quebec has a Charter of Rights and Freedoms that is completely different than our Canadian rights and freedoms. Which I recently heard, I don't know how true it is, but apparently ours doesn't apply to the people. It applies to the government.
Correct.
Yes, Good on you. But the Quebec one didn't seem to fare any better because, they were locking people down, curfews at 10, beating people up on the streets for not hitting a curfew.
And for not wearing masks, beating them up on the streets and forcing masks on their faces as well.
Like literally beating them up. And so I don't think their charter helped them much any more than ours did.
No, because they got the parental supremacy law as well, right? Where if the child wants to transition and the parents don't agree, they will take the child away from the parents.
Exactly.
Yeah, those don't seem like charter of rights and freedoms.
No. Senior Canuck says, hi, Mike.
Yes, the system is rigged, all of them. And that's, fortunately for us, we get to go to school and we get to learn what they're doing. And now we're awake. And thank you, Justin Trudeau. I thank you almost every day, Justin Trudeau, for, the education you've provided for people who care.
It's uniting the people against the corruption.
Foreign enemy, foreign or domestic. Yeah. So they're getting it from all sides. Facebook's getting it from all sorts of places in Europe now. Same thing. They're kind of getting sued from every angle at this point. Hey.
Yep.
Well, I was looking up this class action suit, and I was finding so many other ones that have already been settled. I don't think anywhere in Ontario, but for selling all the data to Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah.
I forget what the other one was, but there's a handful in the last 10 years.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess anybody who was making money off of Facebook as well and had their accounts removed or shadowed, I'm sure they would make awesome litigants against Facebook.
As long as they're in Quebec, though, I don't know why we don't try to get this going elsewhere.
I think people just don't know what their rights are and don't quite understand the legal system, or they're just tired and fed up with the legal system. Mm-hmm. So it could be a bunch of reasons, or they're trying to scrape together the funds to find a lawyer who will take on their case, because these kinds of cases cost mucho dollars.
Yeah.
The legal system is really there for the rich, not for the average person.
And I think we got lucky in this case because the lawyer, William DeRoche, is the one fronting all of the money.
Really?
Eloa Bois hasn't paid anything. She's just giving her time and helping to spread the message.
Nice. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, we'll keep apprised of that one.
And then the other one we got here, everyone's worried about their privacy and security, and everyone rushed over to Proton Mail. I used it for maybe a week, and it was garbage, so I just stopped using it. But they are not the freedom-oriented platform that we believe they are. So, the encrypted mail service hands suspects' personal information to the cops again.
Without warrants or anything. The cops just asked and they said, yeah, sure. And this is the second or third time that Proton Mail has done this in different countries.
Yeah. So the first one, or one of them, was they gave the Swiss police, the IP address and device details of a netizen that the cops were trying to identify. It was a French climate activist, later arrested after Proton Mail shared their data.
Well, we can even take it a step further, because in Switzerland, they actually have more of a right to freedom of speech and freedom of privacy than we do. So we actually know a bunch of people who are on Swiss servers, because the Swiss servers don't give it up to authorities, and they can get away with it there. But so it's even more that Proton is just like, they're not even putting up a fight.
Well, also, who are the people who started Proton Mail, right?
Are they part of the Predators Club?
I believe they're former CERN employees.
Exactly.
Two of them. Yeah.
And I don't believe they were former employees when they started CERN or started Proton. I mean, so yeah.
Don't lawyers take a percentage in lawsuits and refuse the case if not likely to win? I think you might be right, Lori. I think you might be right. And that could be why this Quebec lawyer is waiting, because he knows the payout will be much bigger at the end than if he gets paid hourly ahead.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah, because they take like 60-70%, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So yeah, those are good. Yeah, people overestimate Proton. And I'm starting to say the same thing, think the same thing about, Telegram, Signal, all those ones. I know Signal is fighting, they say they're fighting a battle. I watched a biography on the Telegram guys, and they're kind of suspect anyway. So who knows? It's all.
Everything I put up there, I just assume someone else is reading it.
Exactly.
I did not intend. Yeah.
Yep.
Me too.
But it's funny, they tried to cover their tracks though too. So they removed from their website the fact that they claimed to not track user IP addresses, which they just silently removed to try and cover their tracks from this Swiss situation.
Right. And ironically, again, they don't have to give it up. So they're just not even trying.
Nope. They're friends with the police.
Yeah. That's it. So where do we go for communications, secure communications? Well, like you say, don't say anything online that you don't want read by someone else.
Face to face.
Even Facebook, how this turns, how this ties right back in. Facebook, their privacy or their surveillance issues are so bad that they save instances of messages that you don't even send. So you get halfway through it and you decide, no, I'm too angry or something, and you delete it. They save that deleted portion. So nothing gets deleted. It's all on record.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. That's like the auto save, right? So if you leave and come back, you can continue. And
yeah. So they save that, even though you can't see it. They've got it in a database. And it's funny because somebody's saying, like, you guys got to get on TikTok. And we're like, oh, it's just too invasive. And he goes, what, more than Facebook? And we're like, yeah, when you take a second to think about it,
they're all the same.
Yeah.
They're all the same.
At least there are spies, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, so it's just as bad. So.
Well, you say our spies, but like these global predators, they have no allegiance to any countries. They are multinational, so
right.
True enough.
They're all the same.
What was it? Van Halen's Right Now. One of the lines is, right now your government's doing things that you think only other governments do.
Yeah,
so
true.
They're all the same.
So Senior Canuck is asking, what about Safe Page Mail? Never heard of Safe Page Mail.
Yeah, I haven't. I might have heard of that one, but haven't used it. There's so many that pop up, and
let's look into it.
We will look into that, Mr. Canuck.
That's right. By we, I mean Michael Chuchong. We'll look into that for you.
Safe Page Mail. Yeah, I'll check it out.
Safe Page Mail. Yep.
All right, we will check that out. So
what do you think about the freedom movement, Mr. Chuchong? Is it failing or is it succeeding?
Oh, I think the population is definitely waking up. More and more people are not being afraid to speak up. So many more positive reactions to people on the road. I stopped by the 400 on the weekend to Camp 11. And just stood there and waved the flag. There was only 2 of us on the bridge at the time, but we got a lot of honks, a lot of good responses, including we got the Walmart truck and the FedEx truck to honk for us.
Nice. Yeah. Now they know. You just ratted them out, but okay.
So do you think, so that's people waking up, but do you think those people waking up are partaking in so-called freedom movement activities, recruitment, education, action, or do you think that part of the movement is dying or failing, or what are your thoughts?
There does seem to be some fizzling around that. People are getting tired, not seeing enough action, or not action, enough results. Yes, traction. So
true. Do you think it needs a rebranding at this point?
That wouldn't hurt. I was talking to a coworker at a work lunch a couple of weeks ago, and we always talk about this stuff, and he's very much on the other side, and he says many times, "You guys suck at marketing." But
Oh.
at the same time, he doesn't shy away from calling names, like saying, "You guys sound like idiots because you're against 15-minute cities," and I'm just like, well, that's just their marketing ploy to make you buy into it. What comes
Right.
along with the 15-minute cities is total surveillance. He's like, "Oh, well, I'm against total surveillance, but 15-minute cities are good." I said, "I'm not against good city planning. I'm
Right.
against
Yeah.
15-minute cities. Who's funding these 15-minute cities?"
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. I said I had the same conversation with somebody. I said, well, on the surface, it's a great thing where you can walk to everything you need. Who wouldn't want that? That sounds really convenient until you can't leave. And then it's a problem for me, right? It's the leaving that I like to do as well.
The permission, the having to ask, and oh, you can only leave 10 times,
Right.
or oh, you're not allowed to drive your car at all. Well, it's a freezing cold day. I've now hurt my ankle. I can't walk 5 minutes. I'm going to get in my car. No, you're not. You
Mhm.
know, it's that kind of control. And also the fact that you can't shop where you want to shop anymore. You can't visit friends who live outside that 15-minute city. You can't go to, or paying to leave, exactly like Luann saying, the
Right.
people in Quebec. Well, even the people on Vancouver Island, you guys have to pay astronomical amounts to leave and come back if you want to take your car
Well,
with you.
that's a ferry. Put it in context. We have
That's
a
a
ferry.
service. Yeah, there's a
Yes.
little bit of a
Well,
difference.
$200
Yes and no.
round trip, though.
yes and no. It's an extension of the number one highway, the Trans-Canada Highway. So technically, it should be free, but it's been privatized, and that's kind of a sellout. But but
Mhm.
we've clocked it in Oxfordshire, right?
Yeah.
Was Oxford?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they
Oxfordshire,
were
yeah.
charging people to leave their section to discourage extra carbon usage. So they've already done it. It's not like it's a made up theory. They're already doing it. We've played the videos ourselves where the council's going, well, I mean, that's not what it is. It's just charging you to leave for a while. That's all it is. You conspiracy theorist. And he literally has no idea what a conspiracy theory is, obviously, because
Exactly.
he's
Yeah,
confirmed
they
it
said, don't worry,
himself.
we're not putting up walls or barriers. There's just cameras, and you get charged if you go where you're not supposed to go.
That's
Only
right.
the rich are allowed to leave because only the rich can afford to leave now.
That's right. It's
Now-
like In Time, that movie In Time. That was awesome. Justin
Yeah.
Timberlake.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Really good movie.
If you haven't seen it, you should see that. It's a great movie.
Exactly. Now, Lori Bigori is saying, why do these people not realize they can stay in their 15-minute radius on their own? Why do they want to be forced into it?
Mhm.
And that is a really good point. There's nothing wrong when you have the choice of whether you stay or leave or shop there or don't shop there or find your mate there or not find your mate there. Right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you don't want people to drive their cars, then the onus is on the government to put in a kick-ass transit system like New York.
Oh,
You don't need cars in New York. New York is amazing.
yeah.
Their subway is worked out, and their buses we didn't need for anything.
No,
right?
we didn't. No, and everywhere fast. We got to places faster on the subway than we could walk or than you could drive. Like you put in that kind of a system and you're laughing.
Right. So, just provide what they need, and then you got it covered.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Now, go ahead.
I compare the clever marketing of the 15-minute cities to the Patriot Act in the United States after 9/11. So they brought this out, and you're not a patriot if you're against this act. But
Right.
buried in there was where they could do total surveillance on
Yes.
every single citizen.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. We're all about rah freedom, and also take off your shoes and belt. Yeah.
That sounds like an S&M story. Take off your shoes and belt.
That's right. Welcome to Spirit Airlines. What's your safe word? Yeah. Right. Yeah. So there is speculation the freedom movement's falling apart, and I think you've nailed it. I think it is a marketing issue. It's a branding issue. But I also think that people are gathering and they're just saving their energy because the government's going to do something else, and they're waiting for that, and they're ready to pounce when that happens. But
exactly. Now, we have been inundated with some emails recently, and we were basically going to just ignore them. But then we got another one today, and it was really quite aggressive.
Right.
And that's what started us on the conversation of, is the freedom movement failing? And perhaps this might be one of the reasons why the freedom movement is failing.
But we got to bear in mind, there's also a lot of forces that are really good at their jobs working against the freedom movement. And there are several factions trying to co-opt it for their own globalist purposes. But we got an email from a man named Ian Bell. We don't know him. And he's running a website called virusfraud.org. And you can go to that /winning this war. And he's sending emails out to all the freedom movements. He's using freedomrising.info to go through their directory and contact people from there. And basically, Ian is concerned that the freedom movement has no traction, like that you were mentioning there, and he has come up with a plan on. You know what? I'm just going to leave that up so people can go there. He's coming up with a plan on how to change that, and this is a national. He wants to set up a national council that runs a freedom army, and you are expected to join the freedom army. So that's the gist of it. And so he wants to turn the power of his project over to the National Council when it's created. And that National Council he's putting forward is people like Jeremy McKenzie, Tom Marazzo, Vincent Gerses, Donald Best, Jason Levine. These are all decent people. Like, we have no problem with any of them. The problem we're getting now is that he's drawing a line in the sand, and we haven't responded yet. So basically, he wants your response, and when you respond, he will put your response up on the website. Excuse me. And then on the last responses, he does his commentary and tears them a new one. Mm-hmm. And basically, most of the people are saying no, thank you. And then after that, it's basically you are either with us or you're a friend or you're an enemy, and that's the line that he's drawing in the sand.
But it's a lot of, I order you to do this, I demand that you do that, and
those are literal words.
Literal words from the emails that he is sending out, long-winded emails with orders and demands. It sort of reminds me of the government shaming everybody to do the right thing, or else you don't care about your neighbor. You don't care about Granny.
Right.
And he's basically taking the same marketing plan of the predators and throwing it at freedom organizations. And anybody who knows anything about the freedom movement knows you can't demand and order these freedom activists to do anything. And right. I think Vets for Freedom found that out when James Topp was marching across Canada, and the last leg of his march into Ottawa, they really wanted all of the activists who were joining James marching with him to, three people wide and march in lockstep and keep up and all of that, and to be quiet. And people were all over the place, and it was chaos, but they were marching and they were talking and they were cheering and they were singing, and they were getting really upset because people weren't following the order. They weren't doing as they were told. And we finally had to say, you know what? These are freedomers you're dealing with. And the whole point of the freedom movement is nobody's going to order you
right.
or coerce you into doing something you don't want to do or that isn't good for you. You
right.
are your own person. You get to take ownership of the choices you make. You should just be happy that, thousands of people showed up to share in James Topps's motivated march across Canada. Like that is something pretty phenomenal. Last time that happened was, right. I think, Terry Fox. So, we start.
Right. And you just nailed it, right? The thing about the freedom, the people who rise to the top of the freedom movement or the truth movement or whatever, they're non-compliant. That's the whole thing. They are non-compliant by nature. And when you start using words like order and demand and commandeer and like basically you have to give up your website to them and whatnot, it's not going to put people on the right tone with it. And then you're labeled as an enemy. So you're getting othered already.
Exactly. And then shaming you on his website, publicly shaming organizers and organizations that have been doing really good work for the last 4 years plus. now he wants to shame them because they're not, going into lockstep with him with his demands.
Right. Now we have to pretty much respond because, we weren't going to get too deep into it on the show, but if we're going to talk about it on the show, then of course we're going to have a dialogue personally with him as well. And I'm sure you'll see our response on the website sooner or later.
If he doesn't see the show and put us up there sooner.
Right. But for me, I'm not going to try and take power away from a controlling faction and give it to another controlling faction that's exactly the same. For me, I'm not doing that.
Exactly. Lori B. Gorey is saying it's probably Trudeau. He wants drama and we're not giving him any, and he's getting bored waiting.
Well,
maybe.
Yeah, without, we can drop some hints, but it looks like another Marcus Ray head of the Hydra coming up. Maybe some MK Ultra involved here. I don't know.
Maybe. So that was one of the reasons why we thought, well, his ordered demands are not going to work because that's not who the freedom movement is. And then it made us think about Mark Passio, and I apologize for butchering your name if I am.
I think it's actually Passio.
Yeah. He did a video several months ago, and I believe he called it "Why the Freedom Movement is Failing." And at first I was really put off by the title, but then I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a chance. And I watched it all and I took copious amounts of notes. And he had some really good points, I felt, about why the freedom movement was failing in his opinion. One of them was people are ignorant of natural law. And by that, he meant the law of freedom equals, I'm going to change my glasses so I can read this properly.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Here we go. Okay. The law of freedom, the aggregate of freedom of human beings is directly proportional to the aggregate morality of their behavior. It means that basically you're responsible for your behavior. You govern your consequences accordingly. You are objectively looking at morality, and you know the difference between right and wrong. And right and wrong, no matter where you are in the world, is the same. We all know it's wrong to murder. We don't need rules or live in a certain area to say whether it's right or wrong. We just know it's wrong to murder. It's wrong to rape.
We're talking to you, Anita and Ann.
But basically, there are certain rules of natural law that are unchangeable. They're eternal, and they're not made by man. They are God's law. They are natural law. If you plant a seed and you water it and you nurture it, it will grow. That is a natural law. So ignorance of natural law is one of the reasons why he feels the freedom movement is failing, because people do not want the morality of freedom with consequences, negative or positive, to follow them. Number 2 was ignorance of the occult. Well, anybody who's watching this show is very aware of the occult, especially if you watched our last 4-part series. And the occult is at the core of it is Satanists or shadow governments or anything that is hidden, the dark hidden secrets. But anyway, if you are ignorant of the occult, part of the occult ideology is the knowledge of the laws of the universe and human psyche should be hidden and held by only few beings. And those are the people I call our global predators. And they operate under mass psychological manipulators and social engineers who hold hidden information in ways that exploit and enslave the ignorant masses of humanity. And I'm like, yep, that's about right. People want to go after Trudeau and say he's our enemy, but it's really not him. He's just one of the tools of the occult beings. Number 3, that it is someone else's responsibility. And we hear this all the time.
We're big on this right now, actually. And this is the biggest problem with society, or this is the biggest trap, I guess, is where I think we're at. And it's that we abdicate our responsibility up to other people. And we are just so in the habit of doing that. It happens in church. I abdicate my responsibility with my relationship with God to the pastor. And if it goes wrong, then I blame the pastor. We do the same thing with teaching our children. We give that to basically for 8 hours a day, we give them these teachers to not only educate them, but also raise these kids now. We do that with media. They can make our decisions for us and they tell us what's right and what's wrong.
The healthcare system.
Exactly. Doctors, we abdicate taking care of our own health to doctors. And now we're so entrenched and trained to not take responsibility for ourselves.
Exactly.
Right?
So that's another reason
and that's why we're looking for a hero to come and save us.
Exactly. That, the people in the movement, most of them just want to remain as a permanent audience member. They don't want to engage as an active participant, but they feel they have the right to complain when things go poorly.
Yeah.
And they refuse to own their own personal responsibility. And due to their own inaction, this causes freedom to be destroyed at a faster rate.
Yep.
And I thought, yeah, that's head of the nail. Number 4, desire to stay in their own comfort zone. They don't want to take risks or make sacrifices. They don't want to endure hardships and contribute.
So sweet.
Right. And contribute any time, effort, or resources, financial or otherwise. They don't want to put any skin in the game in any way. We like to call them the armchair quarterbacks. And they feel that if they become further involved in the war for freedom, that they would have something to lose. And therefore, with that attitude, they've already lost. And yep, you're absolutely right. How many people say, well, I have a house. So do I. Yeah. Number 5, the mindset of I'm not blank enough. So you can fill in the blank with I'm not good enough, I'm not talented enough, I'm not loud enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not courageous enough,
drunk enough,
I'm not drunk enough, I'm not wealthy enough. But all of this manifests as a self-serving prophecy. If you think you're not something enough, you never will be something enough. And the other part of that is I don't know where to begin. I'm not like you. Well, you know what?
None of us did. None of us knew where to begin.
None of us are professional activists. We just began. And that's the key. Start where you are. If you're at home, you start with your family. If you're in the office, you start at the water cooler. If you're at the grocery store, start in the grocery store line. Just say, hey, can you believe what happened? Or, hey, I don't like that Trudeau. That always strikes up a conversation.
Michael, were you like this? You're at every freedom. You are just like, what are you? You are the chihuahua that is chained to every freedom movement. And you're just, you are there everywhere. And I sound like I'm kidding, but you truly are amazing. Yeah, watching you work is a thing of joy for me. Were you always like this, or did you become recently a pain in the ass of the government?
I've always been a bit of a social outcast in that way, saying things that people don't necessarily want to hear, but not specifically about the whole tyranny and corruption. In fact, I would say before all of this, I was very demoralized and had very little hope that society would see the reality. So even at the beginning of COVID, I was slow to the draw. I kind of bought it all.
So what got your ass up off the couch?
Well, I did make it to the convoy, and that was beautiful and amazing. But I didn't meet anyone there yet. I didn't meet anyone there when I went, and so I still wasn't doing anything. And it was so Bill C-11 got me active, but there was another bill where they passed in the dead of night. I don't even remember what it was, where they were debating all day, and then after dinner they decided, oh, let's go for one more sitting, and they voted.
They voted on that. That's
Wasn't
right.
that Bill 100 in Ontario?
Yes, that's right. They had a protest. Yeah.
Right. And
so that's what got me like, okay, people need to be aware. So I knew Bill C-11 was still in the works. So I got together with a friend who's a graphic designer, and he designed this awesome poster that some people, that's how they know me when they see that. And I printed that out of my pocket, and I distributed thousands of those all over.
Amazing.
But by hand, not just like some of them I would leave up, but no, I was giving them to people and telling them, and just giving them information and telling them look into this.
Awesome.
And some people spat on you when you gave them to them, but you know what? That didn't stop you. You still went out and you're like, what's a little spittle in the name of freedom?
Well, the person I spit on, I wasn't actually trying to engage, but I was talking to a European grandmother or older mother and her son or grandson, a little kid, and 2 immigrants from maybe Africa, like just having this amazing discourse, and this young skinny white girl with tattoos everywhere is going on a jog, and she just horks right at me as she's running by. Unfortunately, the guy next to me got most of it. I just got a little bit of spittle, but
That is one
yeah.
magic loogie.
But luckily, I'd learned my mistake and got a body cam by that point, so I got all of that on tape, and she's now famous on Instagram.
I was going to say Instagram famous. I remember seeing that video going, oh, gross.
That's right.
But it didn't stop you. It didn't stop you.
It only encouraged me. I realized I'm doing the right thing. When people give me the finger, I blow them a kiss because
because love, peace and
yeah.
love. Yeah, Jody woke me up to fighting for your rights, says Luann. Her lunch experience at Eaton Center, Lower Food Court. That video, of course, went super viral. And everybody was calling you since for your Know Your Rights. What got you off? Like, what was it? Like, were you an emerging flower, or were you just like...
No, I liked my golf and my, charity events and
but were you always loudmouthed and
always
aggressive?
a loudmouth? And my dad will tell you from the get-go, I've always questioned authority. I've never done anything that somebody asked me to do just for the sake of appeasing them or consenting or being compliant. No, I was always why do I have to do that? Explain it to me. And if it makes sense, I'll do it. If it doesn't, kiss my ass.
Always a bull looking for your china shop. Always.
Probably. I think I come by. My sister was the fist and I was always the mouth. And that's just how it went. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, number 6.
And you, Chris?
I was not. I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to, I don't want to
stir the pot.
No, it's not. It's not that. It's just, I saw early the deep psychological trap that people were in, and I just didn't see the point. And I tried a few times and people would kind of snap out and then snap right back, especially with it's funny that AstraZeneca is in the news right now because their guy put out an article on behalf of AstraZeneca, and he was from Oxford, so he didn't kind of associate with AstraZeneca at the time, but he put out this article saying, well, you're wondering why there's vaccines are coming out so quick. It's because we get to cut through the government red tape, and that's why it takes 10 years is because it's government red tape, so we can push it out. And I'm like, well, that's BS. You test it so you don't kill children for a decade. And so somebody said, well, this makes me feel better, and that was kind of my first forte. I was like, no, that's not why. And then and I said, this is not the same as any other vaccine. So, and then all of a sudden I put a comment in and it was like, bing, 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 bing. All these people felt freed up to say something. And that was kind of like, well, maybe, and she ended up getting the vaccine. So it didn't really change her mind. And so I thought, well, what's the point of arguing? Because I know that this psychological warfare is really deep and good. It's really well done. But I did a video that was a half an hour long, and it was talking about Vanguard and BlackRock and the government collusion, and that went viral as well. And I remember getting my information package out, my evidence package out, and I went to a rally one day, and I kind of snuck in the back and gave it to them, and it was like a statement of like, I'm not going to kill myself, and I'm in good health and all that stuff. And I snuck in and I gave this evidence, and nobody did anything with it. Nobody wanted to do anything with it. So I'm like, screw it, I'll do my own video. And at that point I realized the government's not going to come and kill me for this because they own the courts, they own the police. What do they care? Nobody's coming after me. So that was kind of my first into public forte into doing the freedom stuff after that. And I kind of just went from there. Ted Kuntz was a big influence. And then Ryan Penn kind of brought me under his wing at Take Action Canada and taught me what to do. And then I went from there.
And all three of us met through Take Action Canada.
Thanks to Ryan Penn.
Thank you, Ryan Penn.
Right.
Exactly.
Mhm.
It's funny. I still haven't seen the video of you in the mall. I've heard it a million times, but I
Oh,
don't think I've
everyone.
personally seen it.
Yeah. She's like Brad Pitt famous. When I first moved here, like we're walking down the streets of Toronto and people get this guttural reaction to Jodie Ledgerwood. And I'm like, should I get you to sign my breasts or something? Like this is, yeah, it was kind of weird, but whatever. She's done a lot. The people call her still for that package.
They
So,
call me for a lot of
yeah,
reasons.
not to minimize that. Yeah.
But yeah, no, exactly. Number 6, making endless excuses for others. This is a big one. And we were at an event on, was it Thursday? Yeah, Thursday we were at an event and I was talking to 2 women and this happened again at this event. And I thought, interesting. Making endless excuses for others. So they basically are accepting evil behaviors of the police, the medical professionals, military, teachers, etc. All of the above, just following orders, people. And basically, it's abdicating your responsibility to choose moral actions. And every time you make excuses for those who were just following orders, you are emboldening them, and the less likely they are to ever consider the immorality of their actions.
Mm-hmm.
And the conversation I had on the weekend was, well, he's a dad and he had 2 children that he had paid child support for and he has a mortgage. So of course he had to do it. Of course he did. And I said, well, no, he didn't have to
Get
do
the
it.
vaccine.
He could have easily fought based on contract law and kept his job. And she said, well, I'm a lawyer and that never would have worked. And I'm like, well, did you try it? Well, I'm telling you that wouldn't have worked. And I thought that was interesting because I helped so many people fight based on their employment contract, and almost every single one of them kept their job. So when you start making excuses for the police or doctors, well, they have a mortgage, well, they have children, well, they had to because their chief said they had to, well, they would have lost their job. All you're doing is emboldening them to continue with the evil behavior.
That's right. You're allowing it. We even read a book called Life in the Third Reich, and it's firsthand accounts of people in Nazi Germany, right way back before it all went horribly wrong. And that was some of the things that they said is that they saw these things happening where people were getting beaten up and pulled away in vans, and they were absolutely positively 100% certain that Hitler would not know about something like that because he was such a great guy and he would never know that anything like that is happening. And so it's all these people just trying to they can't fathom that evil people are in charge, yet here we are.
Exactly.
Today.
And they don't want to make the connection that you're just as evil if you do it. And I used to say to people, if your boss told you to hit every single person that walked through that door wearing a red hat, would you hit them? And the answer almost inevitably was always, no, that's assault. I'm like, yeah, but your boss told you to do it or you're going to lose your job. You're just following orders. And they're like, well, no, I wouldn't do that. But this is the exact same thing. Every time somebody wouldn't allow somebody in who wore a mask, or every time you asked somebody if they had their vaccination status with them and they didn't, and you didn't let them in, that was exactly the same thing. You were forcing an assault, and now you're excusing the behavior, the immoral behavior, because they had a job or they had children, or well, they're really a nice person. They're not a nice person if they assaulted you or coerced you or forced you to do something you didn't want to do or that wasn't good for you.
Right.
So,
and
silence is violence.
Exactly. I like that. Much better than silence is compliance.
Yeah.
I like that. Silence is violence. That's way better. Yes. And then the 7th reason that Mark said the freedom movement is going to fail is because ignorance of how to get the message out. So many people say they don't know how to get the message out. They don't know how to manage their time, or they don't know how to motivate people, or they don't know how to use technology. I don't know how to use technology, but somehow I made it work, or how to research, or they don't know how to be a content creator, or they don't know how to influence others, or they don't know how to do what Chris and Michael do. But that's so wrong because you know what? We didn't know how to do it either before we started doing it.
Took a lot of testing.
It took a lot of
and
testing.
getting it wrong. You know, we got some crappy videos.
I don't think there is one answer either, right?
No.
Everyone has a different thing that they will thrive at, and then everyone has a different thing that will connect with them as well. There's so many people who are like, well, what's the answer?
Right.
I don't want to do this. That's just brainstorming. It's like, no, that those brainstorming are going to get you to that spot that is your foothold.
Is your voice. Exactly. Like I don't know how many times I'll be researching something like crazy for hours on end. I'll have it picked apart like crazy, and Jody walks in, well, what about that? And I totally missed it. Right. So it takes a second brain, right? It's you know, so everybody's got their own take and they pick up things nobody else picks up on.
Yeah. Our dear friend Ryan Penn always says, what's your superpower?
Exactly.
And every time he asks somebody that, they stop and they don't know what to say because they immediately think invisibility cloak, flying, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the case. Your superpower is what is it you're good at. For some people, they're detail oriented. For other people, they're good with words. For other people, they're good at speaking out. For other people, they're good at just going for walks and putting stuff in mailboxes or putting stuff on people's windshields. Or
Right.
you know what? Drawing cartoons or putting little videos together or anything, just even talking to the cashier as you're cashing out your groceries. That is a superpower.
Correct.
Start a conversation. And if you're too shy to deal with people, take a whiteboard marker, those expo markers that you can buy at the dollar store and at Staples, and write a message on your vehicle. Ask a question. If you're afraid of confrontation, then just ask a question. What is the World Economic Forum? What is mRNA, bivalent, whatever? What is the cause of turbo cancer? What is something, or who is something?
Right.
And it'll start a conversation. Or you know what? A lot of people started making hoodies or t-shirts or ball caps, and they just went out wearing the ball cap or the t-shirt or the hoodie, and that was enough to spread information and have conversations. And don't say you're no good at conversations, because I guarantee you'll have probably 50 conversations in a day, especially if you work in the public sector.
Right. So we'll put that back up just so you can see it again. Head on. It might be languaging and tone that resonates with you, and you're all on board. So head on over there and see if that resonates with you. Read through it, and contact Ian if you're interested in that for sure. So we're going to be back on Thursday.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We are. Oh, and if anybody is curious, Pat King is now in the Ottawa area because his trial is beginning. So there are still lots of truckers that are still on trial or going to trial, or who have been found guilty and are looking at appealing those verdicts. So keep your eyes and ears peeled. If you're no good at educating and spreading the word, and you're one of the lucky ones that still have a job, then spread your money. Help these people who stood up for you. If you're comfortable being an armchair quarterback, then at least throw out your dollars at the people who are out on the streets, working hard for you, working to save your children, working to save your future, working to save your assets.
Yes. So with that, I think we will see you soon. Oh, right. Michael caught it right at the last minute. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, so this weekend at the Souls Path Retreat out in Blackstock, I think we mentioned this a few weeks ago, but yeah, they're doing something called the Hub for Humankind, and they've got a whole weekend's worth of workshops and people speaking, and I believe Jody will be doing something on the Sunday.
Yep. I have, what am I doing? Is
that the right address for that?
Soulspath.ca. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm doing a workshop on Sunday called A Year of Yes and Owning Your No. You have to come and check it out to know what that's about, because I'm not going to elaborate any further.
That means I'd have to say yes.
And you're going to be there too, Michael, are you not?
I will be, yeah. I'm
are you running a workshop?
No, no, we couldn't quite figure out a workshop that was appropriate for me. I'm still learning the natural law and the contract law
Mm,
and that kind of stuff. But I'm going to be helping out with the videography team. So they're going to put a documentary together or improve their YouTube or Rumble
nice.
presence. But yeah, it's about building the spirit, building community, as well as trying to find answers. The answers are um, a big factor in what they were trying to put together. Um, but maybe the fact that I don't think there is one answer is why we couldn't figure out something for me to lead up. But
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And there's people need to remember that above anything else. Who's running the world? It's not one answer. What's their motivation? It's not one answer. How do we get out of this? It's not one answer. So you're right. That's probably the smartest thing that anybody's going to tell anyone on that weekend. So just say that. Wear a t-shirt that says there's not one answer.
That's it. Senior Canuck says, I have a sticker on my car that says they lied.ca. So there's another way you can do things. And Lori Bigori says, Citizen Ninja is a good book to get to learn how to stand up. So there's 2 more solutions we just gave you today. And don't forget your cow ear tags,
that's
compliments of Mr. Chu Chong
Right.
himself.
I'll be making another batch shortly. Yeah, I should have
Nice.
started already.
Yeah, you should bring them down to humankind. A hub for
Yeah,
humankind.
they won't be ready. Yeah, I did have them at
Oh.
Soul's Path, but or Soul
Awesome.
Shine last year, but yeah, I
Yeah.
haven't gotten ahead.
But there's going to be lots of workshops there. There's 4 different sections offering 4 different workshops at the same time all day long. So if you're not into one thing, I'm sure there's going to be another thing running at the same time that you can go to. There's foraging workshops, there's canning workshops, there's healing workshops, there's nutrition workshops, there's strength and toning, there's freedom,
Lots of workshops.
all kinds of
So,
workshops.
there we
There's
go.
something for everyone, every hour on the hour. So
Right.
check out
And
soulspath.ca.
it's a family friendly event. They'll have some workshops for children or some activities planned for the children as well.
Perfect. Okay. And with that, I think we'll cut it there, and we will see you all on Thursday. So thank you very much for watching. And, I just want to say a quick thank you to people like Luann and Hesham and Senior Canuck over
Senior
here and
Canuck.
Lori Bigori. You guys help make our show much better, and we're just so grateful that you watch all the time. Did I miss anybody? I missed Dash
Out.
I sure did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Adam
thank you for
says
everybody.
things is usually here too. So
Exactly.
you guys really do add another flavor to our show and give us something to talk about and add in. So thank you very much for commenting and sticking with us week after week.
All right, everybody. We will see you on Thursday. Thanks for watching. Take care.